Dowsing for gold and realization. Many things can be said about dowsing, good and bad. I've studied the effect for some time now, and here's the idea in a nutshell. Skeptics say it doesn't work. I tested in the field and it works with an average of 90% accuracy while mining. So dowsing works in the field but not in a controlled test. This is what I learned in the field and in a lab type setting. Then the scientists and skeptics say the force can't be measured. Skeptics say that physicists say this. So I thought about that aspect for a while and came to a conclusion that they might have been overlooking the simplest way to do that. So in other words, they overthought it. I knew they missed something. They had to. The proof I was seeing and getting, the money, made it so. I figured out how to measure the force, and it finally dawned on me after hundreds of experiments and lots of time that they were overthinking this, and I found a very simple way. That simple way improved my accuracy to about 90% correct in a double-blind test in a lab-type setting. If you can measure the force, you would then have a control over the unknown reactions or false readings. Those unknown false readings are why a controlled test was near impossible. Overcoming the negative aspect became my goal, and measuring is what did it for me. Why would I be so interested in something like this? Proof of a theory from this example would change everything. That's what happened to open my eyes up to a new way of thinking. How do you guys think I got the money to invest in all this equipment, by the way? They looked at each other, and some of them simply said, "The gold." "You got it," I said. Carl was in the background smiling because he knew all of this already. He was there. He taught me the basics, and I taught him how to find gold by dowsing. So he's been on board from the start. He even ran tests with me in Hayfork. The gold doesn't last forever, but at this point, it made my theory possible, along with other inventions. Soon my thoughts back then also were about this need to do something about global warming, but not what the government said or what corporations laughed about. Back in the 70s and 80s, they already knew about global warming and that we were jeopardizing the planet's environment. Hence, the hole in the ozone was brought to light by the media and some academics. I love the government's response back then. Their way to fix the problem was to fix global warming, wear a hat, sunglasses, and sunscreens, quote unquote. They even ran ads stating this in a mockery response to that finding. Here's basically how it works. For gold and metals, gold is an element and very heavy on the atomic scale. You take a Y-shaped willow stick, and the two branches that are symmetrical is what you grasp. The leading conjuncture of the two opposing ends you slice with a knife in a parallel fashion and insert a piece of gold. Make sure you secure it so you don't lose it. That is supposed to change its properties from a water seeker to a gold metal seeker. The guy that taught me, Tim Pogue, was kind of famous. He's the man who found the uranium for the Army engineers during World War II, when they couldn't find enough to make atomic bombs. Someone at once blurted out, "You're kidding me." Someone else said, "You're joking." Nope. He had mines and equipment all over the lower 48 and in Alaska. You can check if you want to. You see what we have here, referring to the working model, which is proof. This is the result of that. As Tim stated, if you learn this, you'll never pull a shovel of dirt out of the ground without hitting pay dirt / gold. In other words, no wasted labor. I had experienced how important that was, and what it was like to not make money for the labor you have to put into mining. The basis to all this and the model is more workforce out than energy in. Before I knew about this technique, I mined for 2 weeks dredging with a 5-inch without more than $20 a day. And some days weren't even worth mentioning. It amazed me. I used all of my book knowledge looking for it and not finding no more than a trace. And this guy comes out with a wise stick, a willow branch, and in a matter of minutes showed me where the gold is. Amy asked, "Did you believe he could help you?" Anything was worth a shot, but I still tried on my own for a few more days. Silly me. Once I started to listen to what he said, I started to pull about an ounce a day again. It was about what I was getting before I lost the lines. "What do you mean by the lines?" Drew asked. "The lines are the paths the gold follows downstream. They are usually faint, but when they collect over hundreds of years in traps of low-pressure obstacles or holes on the bottom, along those lines they become very lucrative. If you are on a good one, anyway. Those traps collect large quantities over time, and that is what we really look for." Of course, I didn't want to believe him right away, and after a couple more futile days of nothing, I had no choice but to try where he suggested. And the results made me reconsider that it worked. And after seeing how easy that method was, I decided I would learn that method too. Why not? I was told that many dredgers, placer miners, go broke and have to quit months before the season is over. It was true, and the odds in town were against me. It seemed no matter where I put in. As different years went by, I heard others in town say the gold wasn't there where I was mining. You always hear that rumor, it seems. They would say Jerry or Larry mined there a year or two before me and cleaned it out. I proved them wrong each time because of what Tim taught me. During the winter near springtime and the waters dropped, I was checking a bank where we thought we would put a dredge in the next season. Dowsing there was functioning like it was supposed to, but then all of a sudden pointed straight up. And I kept trying to get it to stop because that wasn't the way it was supposed to work. It was doing the exact opposite of pointing the gold out. And I stood there wondering how or why this was happening. There had to be an explanation because the nugget I was using in the end of the willow branch was 1/5 of an ounce, and if anything, should be falling downward by the force of gravity alone because of its weight. Carl said, "Somehow the polarity got reversed?" ? "Yes," I said, "and it proved that you can repel metal and its weight in the gravity field. It was the simplest example and explanation. This was a turning point for me. Carl seen that happen, didn't you? Yep, he simply remarked. I wasn't sure what caused it to do that at the time, but that's what we proved with the model, and now we will upscale that into a device we can test in Drew's airplane. Drew said, "No problem. I'm game. I have studied the effect now for 20 years, and here's what I know and have theorized. What Tim taught me was wrong partially. Gold in the end of the stick isn't attracted to just gold. It picks up all metals. Why is the question. So here's what I think is happening. When metals that are heavy in weight and are in the ground, they distort the gravitational field through negativity, and it's that distortion that causes the reaction, because all metals that are trapped in rivers with placer golds in those traps, cracks, and boulder packs, the metals add to the distortion. Gold, lead shot, bullets, coins, iron, plus magnetic black sands, which scientists, geologists agree on, are the remains of a large metal meteor, a very large meteor. Plus it will pick up a quartz vein holding gold miles away. Another key is the quartz. To get the motion out of something, you have to put energy into something. The energy is in your body via your aura, and that energy is similar to a magnetic field powered by static, basically. I looked at Magic Square, and he started to smile. With the first model, I deduced that certain quartz also holds a charge and or magnifies it, so we use that too. There's more work produced than energy used because it connects to the field of the Earth. It's drawing the electrical distortion negatively and is using negative energy. The energy we know about, or almost nothing about, works overly efficiently. When you know how to access it, and as far as we know, we are the first to amplify it. If we do that, draw energy through a negative ground and distort the field around us, then any place on Earth can be accessed, and not just where metals distort the field. The best description is that the distortion is a miniature event horizon, the edge of a well, that the object/matter is attracted to, but only if energized because of the small scale from the other side of the advent horizon. That energy well is the magnetic field in distortion. Then there are the spikes, or the high points of the field. They are like a solar flare in a sense, or rather what a black hole is ejecting, as energy or magnetic field can't be contained at all times, and are distorted in opposite direction. One force in it and one forces it out, up and down against the background field that is powering the event. As far as mining gold, the hard part is this. You need to be able to tell the difference between a speck that isn't worth the labor and a load that is profitable. Thus, the need to measure the force for proof of it working in a dowsing or a double-blind test. After testing this many times, I found out that Tesla was right when he said we should be able to use the field of the Earth to power our houses and vehicles with virtually free energy and fly with it. I learned about Stubble and his discovery of the Earth battery, which was more proof. What I witnessed on that bank that day was a form of levitation on a small scale, so the energy is reversed and an opposite effect occurs, or as I found out, it followed one of those spikes or magnetic flares upward. It occurs with less than 0.001 milliamp of your body's electrical field. It lifted approximately 3.5 pennyweight. In grams, that's 5 to 6 grams approximately. That levitated upwards. When that happened, I absolutely knew that day was important. And at the same time, I thought this could fix the Earth's problems. My mind rushed back to what I had witnessed out there on that road, and I remembered the question in my mind. What is it that they use to levitate that kind of weight, mass? What principle of propulsion could they be using to defeat gravity? And I just seemed to witness the key to this technology right here in my hands. We can build this, and we are. This first primitive model that I demonstrated the effect with, and the plane tests now with what we've been working on, we're on our way. Thanks to Drew for the use of the plane. You're welcome, he sputtered sarcastically. Everyone thanked him. We will soon know and have the evidence that will urge us forward as I see it. If successful with these next sets of tests, there will be no telling where we can go with this. I continued. Scientists gave up on proving that there was anything to dowsing because they did not learn all of the negative aspects and how to overcome them in a controlled test environment. Can't blame them. It took me years to just figure that out. They gave up because it was such a weak force. They figured it wasn't worth the effort. What they didn't know is that the force coming out is greater than the energy input, because some or most is coming from natural forces already. They're feeding back into the device in a loop. Like what an amplifier does with sound. Add more power and the frequency gets louder. An amplifier gets loaded with feedback, the tone increases in our devices. Increase its load. You feed it more power. You now know this, especially as you approach or get closer to the field, or that part of the field you are attracting to or repelling from. When it holds the distortion, it gets stronger, faster. In its weakest state, it can pick up a depression in the field that's miles away, and it will pick out the strongest source that's the closest to the dowser, or soon the mechanism position to those attractors. It's like walking on a bed of nails. The nails are the spikes in the field, and the foot is the ship. Drew interjected. Now I know what you're getting at. This fills in the unknown gaps that other technologies are missing in their theories. He scurried off to get a few drawings and prints he had and started to write on them as I finished up my explanations. One other factor that is important is that the closer you get to that source, the stronger the pull or reactions are. And there's no stopping that reaction unless you break the circuit. The same thing happens with a dowser. I knew all this at the moment on the creek bank when the mechanism, the dowsing rod pointed up, and then all of this made sense somehow. Before I gathered you all together, I had built a small model that eliminates the organic and the human element and powered it with a 9-volt battery. That I demonstrated, right? So this here is the theory I came up with. I handed them a copy of the proposal that Magic Square and I put together years before in the early 90s. Figure 1, page 398. I found out that NASA thought that this was interesting, and they still turned us down for lack of budget. And they believed scientists that supposedly knew all there was to know about this in physics. Skeptics also said they wanted me to prove dowsing. All I knew was that the money in my pocket proved it. And there was the fact that no one that year or any year that I mined for gold on that same creek had found as much as I did, whichever year I mined. What I wanted was to prove with NASA that the opposite reaction caused motion, as you all know. Magic called out from the grill and picnic area. It's time to eat and take a break. We rounded up Carl's kids, and we all sat down to barbecued steaks, corn, potatoes, and drinks. So after this, the kids ran back to play. Then the questions start to fly again. One of my friends, Carl I think, asked, "What's next?" It's time to finish that second, for the lack of a better word, device. What about the rest of you? Are you ready to do this? All of them looked at each other, then hands joined in a circle of hands on top of each other, and a cheer went up, and all agreed as hands flew upward. So this is what happened when some of the most intelligent people came together with their advanced expertise, because they knew this was all real now and doable. They didn't need convincing anymore, and I will have to regress to the other truth of this story, which answers the UFO mystery as Magic Square and I see it, or at least we thought it did. I could only convince Carl to come down out of the goldfields after he read the proposal. Next, Chapter 7. And I'll give you this. We suspended targets in the air on a line, and what I got out of that was there's an energy going up from the earth. The stick points up, and then when you move over to the other side, there's an energy line going down to the earth, and the stick points down. That experiment was very important. All right, next chapter will be third sighting.